Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Leslie Schreiner. Did I say your name right?
You sure did.
I thought so. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you, Alysia. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, as you said, I'm Leslie Schreiner, and I live dogs. And I live with them in my personal life. I live with them in my professional life. Basically, my whole life has revolved around dogs for the last 25, 30 years. So I've worked as in virtually every area. So veterinary technician, professional trainer. Currently, I own and operate a grooming salon, and I do a lot of education specifically on Standard Schnauzers, but all types of dogs, all types of situations. I have been doing a lot recently in helping people explore their dog's purpose and their purpose with their dogs, and guiding people through end-of-life decision-making and bereavement when they have to say goodbye.
I really love what you do with the dog's purpose and the person's purpose with the dog. Like it's so unique that it's intriguing, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Tell me more about that.
Well, I think just like all of us, all of the dogs in our lives are here for a purpose. And we may not easily know what it is. That's an exploration like it is for us. And sometimes when people and their dogs are kind of stuck in their relationship, it's not quite, they know it's not what they want it to be. They know there's more, but they don't know how to go about it. They don't know what changes to make, what systems to adjust. So if they can start to live, people can start to look at it in terms of, what's the greater purpose that my dog is here for, and how do I support that? Even if it's just to be a companion for myself. It doesn't have to be save the world important. It might be, and some dogs are here for that. Some people are here for that, but it could also just be the dog's here to support me so I can be a better me and show up as a better me in all the places I want to, whether it's at work or at home with my kids. And sometimes you don't even know what the dog's purpose was until you look back. Because I can look back at the dogs that I had at the time when my kids were really young, and see the ways that they were there to help me shape my kids. But I didn't know that for 15 years later. I could look back and go, hey, I did this really good parenting thing that I'm really happy about. But I learned that from living with my dogs or supporting my dogs, letting my dogs support me. So there's a lot of different directions that purpose conversation can go, but it's a really good one for charting a course to find more alignment when you know that relationship isn't quite where you want it to be, but you don't know where to start. You don't know how to turn it around. You don't know how to guide it to be where you want it to be, where you know the dog and you would both be happier, or all of you would be happier if you have a multi-dog household like you and I both do.
And everyone who's been listening to my podcast knows when I got my first dog and how he just showed up on our back porch because who knows what happened. We gave him a backstory that somebody dumped him in the country, and as people often do, and we had just I've never seen my boyfriend do this before or since, but he dumped some bacon grease out back. We don't technically have a backyard, but instead of just letting the bacon grease get hard and wiping it out with a paper towel or whatnot, he went outside and he dumped it, and that's what attracted the dog to our backyard area. And we've had Indy for a little over a year, and he has a lot of energy and we don't. And so we would notice that every night he'd come up to us and bring us a toy, and he's like, and we're like too tired to even throw the toy, and he'll come back and he'll bring another toy. He's like, well, will this one work? Will you do this one? Will you play with this one? Will you play with me here? And so we adopted a second dog as a pet to Indy. And the thing that I think is so beautiful about both of these dogs is how much joy that they've brought into our lives. In like, we didn't have this feeling like something was missing, but once Indy came, it was like, oh, we're so much happier with this dog. And then we wanted him to have his companion and his entertainment, and so then we rescued Audi, and there's been lots of lessons that Audi has brought into our lives. Apparently we needed to get rid of our couch because she's shredded that. So that's kind of how you and I started talking about jumping on the podcast in the first place, is how parenting and dog rearing are similar.
Yeah, they really are, actually. I Not every audience is ready to hear that. But there's so much about dogs and children that the approach is really similar. You want to shape behaviors and to create the behaviors that will help the dog succeed, that will help the child succeed. And there's only so much, and by so much I mean zero, good that explaining to a small child or explaining to a dog why you need, for your adult reasons, for them to do these things, it's fruitless. It's pointless. I mean, it makes us feel better, but I'm sure, like me, you've been in the Target or in the grocery store, and you saw the mom, or the mostly moms, that are lecturing their 2-year-old about why they need to stop crying because I can't take it anymore, and because I have these bills to pay and whatever. And you're just going, wow, that kid can't possibly take anything away from that diatribe except you are causing me a problem.
You're not getting me the thing that I want right now.
Right. So, but to what I learned that helped me with my kids, that I learned from raising dogs and raising puppies, is scheduling, planning ahead, knowing what their needs are going to be, and be ready for them instead of reactive to them. And just generally recognizing that they require your presence, not just your physical presence, but your mental, emotional, attention presence on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So the more you can plan for those things, then the more that the puppy or the dog or the child can get into the routine and and not have to go to these, I call them in quotes, survival strategies to get their needs met. So they learn more about being cooperative and working with you rather than, oh my God, what do I have to do to get your attention now? And oh, when I see you're in that place, I got to work really hard to get your attention. I got to pull out all the stops and be as, again, in quotes, bad as I can, because if I'm quote unquote good, you'll ignore me.
Yeah. And I'm filtering everything that you're saying through the eyes of having a new puppy. And we really just had this like idea that, okay, since she's older, she's gonna know more, because she's not a baby like Indy was 2-3 months old when he showed up. So he was baby. She was 10 months when we got her. So we're thinking, you know, she's going to have some knowledge. What we didn't factor in was that she was a stray. So we don't know how long she was a stray. We don't know if she's had any experience with humans. We don't know. I mean, we knew that she loved dogs, which is why we picked her. And we knew we could win her over, because we're amazing humans. And so we've won her over now. So now the training's going to start soon. But we just had this thought the other day. We adopted another brand new puppy. She doesn't know about not peeing in the house. She knows that when she's got to pee, she's going to squat, you know, that's what she did in the wild. That's what she did, you know, her whole life. So why would now be any different? Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest profound shift that I had was, I think, the second day she was in the house and she had just destroyed the living room. And I think I just muted myself. She destroyed the living room. And the only thing I was really mad about was that she came close to destroying the cross stitch. She actually didn't hurt the cross stitch at all. She ate the bag that the cross stitch lived in, but that was all she did. But that had the highest priority to me, and that made me the most mad. But the cool thing in that situation was the shift that I had, that I could then teach Xander. And my shift was, she's not setting out to destroy my living room or ruin my cross stitch. She just doesn't know what she's allowed to chew on.
Right.
And the thought of, she's out to get me, she's out to get my stuff, made me mad. And the thought that she doesn't know what she's allowed to chew on gave me compassion and put me in a teacher mode. Excuse me. And that was something that Xander had been asking me how to do, is to shift my mood, because I went from angry to compassion, and more importantly, not angry. And he didn't understand the steps on how to do that. And I'd been doing it for so long that I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to explain it.
Right.
So not 100% related to what you were talking about, but those were the thoughts that were filtering through my head.
But it is related, because we can only have the expectations that we know how to have until something happens that makes us go, oh, I need some different tools in my tool chest. And as you say, when you can see something from the dog's perspective or the child's, like in the case of this, the new dog that came in and on day 2 destroyed your living room. You know, from the dog's perspective, especially, she's been a stray all this time. She comes in, she goes, there's so much new stuff here. I want to explore all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we as humans can recognize that, especially young dogs do so much of their exploration with their mouth, and to them, they're exploring textures, they're exploring taste, they're exploring the give, or the knot, or the brittleness, or the knot. They're not trying to destroy anything. They're just exploring it. And that happens to be highly destructive sometimes.
That's such a good perspective. I didn't know that that's how they explore. So, I don't know a whole lot about dogs. I had dogs growing up, but my mom always had it was always a rescue, because for the same reason, like, then I don't have to do the potty training and all of that. But I didn't know a lot about dogs. I was kind of indifferent to animals in general. I like kittens, and then they grow up to be cats. But I love the kitten, and so I've ended up always having cats. But having these dogs, it's as an adult with the responsibility of the dog has been really interesting, and lots of lessons involved in all of that. But I'm learning about the pack order and the pack mentality and the alpha and all, and you and I had previous conversations about all of it, and we're seeing it act out more now that we have two instead of the one, because he was our pack, but now they're kind of part of a pack too. And we've been treating the dogs in a way like how you would treat an older child with a new child coming in. And it's been just kind of a fun, interesting experience. And I've learned to not have this big emotional breakdown around my stuff. Like, she hasn't touched the couch in probably 3 weeks, and then we left her home alone for, I don't remember how long it was. It was less than an hour, and she found a spot on the couch that I might have missed the bitter spray on, and she got to it, and it was like, oh, come on.
Right. Or maybe a drip of somebody's drink or food got on that spot, and so now that smells like amazing, and let me explore that, and there's nothing else going on. This is the most attractive thing in the environment right now. And then so one of the things that I found really helpful in raising dogs to avoid those kind of situations, that then translated to raising kids a little bit or a lot, was controlling their environment so that they would not be able to do something that would make me unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, with a young dog, teaching it to be confined in a pen or in a crate when I'm gone means I'll never come home and be unhappy at him. I'll never come home and be like, oh my God, what did you do? Mm-hmm. And then all the ramifications of that, whatever it did. And so then that kind of translated to with the kids too. Okay, I have to go do a thing where my attention is going to be diverted. What can I set up for them that will keep them focused long enough for me to accomplish the thing over here that I need to do? And, when I raised my kids when they were little, I was grooming out of my home instead of grooming outside my home, which I had done before and since. But, when I'm working, grooming the dog, I need to not be distracted by the kids all the time, or sometimes it was a dog that wouldn't be good with the kids. So I would set up, that would be the only time when I would let them watch TV, or I would put on the Elmo videotape or whatever, so that they could be like, oh, it's TV time. And they love that because that's the only time I offer it. And just by the same token, when I'm raising young dogs, and a lot of them are crated here in my office space, but I need them to be quiet. Okay, I'm going to get on a Zoom call. Let me stuff a bone with something really good, or a Kong toy, or put a thing that works really great is you take a Kong and you put wet dog food in it and you freeze it. And then you take it out and you give it to them. And since it's frozen, they're going to be working on it for a while.
Yeah.
And they don't get everything out right away. And so that's a good way to buy yourself 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. Every time I feed my dogs in the crate, because I have enough dogs that otherwise I would have resource guarding. I'd have the picky dogs would never eat and they would become skeletally thin. And the ones that resource guard would eat everyone else's food and they would be balloons. So,
yeah.
So in order to not have that issue, I crate them to feed them. So they love to go in their crate. I'm holding a food bowl and they run in and they're like, here I am, give it to me. Or if I'm not going to feed them, I still give them a little chewy or something and the dog chews are a little the equivalent of, here, go read a book. Go play with your handheld, whatever. The equivalent for the dog is, here's a chewy. Go have that. And I only give them those things in the crate so that there's never a thing of, well, I really like this particular chewy, but I like it better on the sofa than I do in the crate. Because I only give it to them in the crate. They're like, oh, I want the chewy. Where do they go? They go where I need them to be. They go where I want them to be, not because they know that's what they should be doing, but because I shape the habit that's the only way that unfolds for them. And so they don't experiment with behaviors that might reward them in ways I don't want them to be rewarded.
Yeah. I
have a puppy right now who I didn't catch soon enough that she likes to shred bedding. Because and I've watched her do it because intellectual curiosity, not just telling her stop, but what is she getting out of that? And I can tell she enjoys it so much. She puts her paw on part of it and she puts her mouth on part of it. And I can just see her enjoying the tactile sensation of the fabric pulling apart. And then, if you've ever ripped apart an old towel to make rags or something like that, there's
a little satisfying.
Something there.
Yeah.
That's a little satisfying. And so I'm like, oh, okay. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, if you want to label it fault, it's not hers for enjoying that. It's mine for not picking up on the fact that I'm allowing her to create a habit of how to satisfy a need she has. Right. It's great. She's learning to be independent and entertain herself. It's just not in the way I would have chosen. But unless I remove the bedding for a while and put something else in its place, like a Kong stuffed with frozen wet food or something like that, to build a new habit, she's not going to be able to outgrow that. And so that was another kind of thing that I learned to observe with the kids. When are they doing the stuff I don't want them to do? Oh, well, it's when it's about getting my attention. But as a single mom, working full time at the time, come home from work on those days that I was grooming at the animal hospital, pick them up from school, take them home, got to make food, got to this, and this. But they want to be with me. They want my attention.
Yeah.
But I can't do both at the same time. So I make part of my plan of, okay, this is the 30 minutes. Again, here's one of the only times you get to watch the TV, and I put a nature documentary on, because that's not going to cause me a problem in terms of what am I exposing my kids to. They're like, oh, it's the TV. We love that. I just bought myself 30 minutes to go finish making dinner. And then we can all be focused again.
And it sounds like a lot of parenting and dog training and raising is trial and error. In the beginning, at the very least, like when you're with your first kid, there's the most awful joke ever is like the first pancake is like the first kid. It's a throwaway.
And you know, that's the place where raising dogs first can be helpful, because I totally get that analogy, because we have that with dogs that we train for higher levels of performance, you know, where you've seen agility, you've seen them run in the obstacle course, or they're right next to the owner, they're heeling perfectly and they're doing sits and downs on command in lots of different situations. Well, to get to that end point, you have to incrementally train certain aspects that all come together at that higher level. So it's kind of like that. We always say with our first performance dog, kind of like you said, it's the throwaway one, or it's the one I learned on so I could be more successful training everyone after that. So it's similar.
And it's important. It's important to reflect, but not beat yourself up in both categories. You know, you're looking at this dog that likes to shred, and you were curious what she was getting out of that. And now it's a bad habit that, you know, you could, and this is what most moms do, is they look back at their curiosity of what was happening, or of their lack of understanding of what was happening. And then they beat themselves up because they didn't understand what was happening at the time. And my dogs are zooming around the house right now. They're zooming so much that they're creating wind. It's hysterical to me. I like, that's my favorite thing that they do.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of similarities, but the one thing I want to express for sure that's fundamentally different about raising a dog and raising a child is the child is eventually going to grow up and leave and live an independent life. So it's really important that you raise them in a way that builds their ability to be independent. But the dog is going to live with you for its whole life. And honestly, your life is going to be so much simpler if it remains dependent on you. And the way it stays dependent on you is because you reliably provide the needs so that they don't have to figure it out for themselves. So that's by learning that first. How do I create this mentality that the dog keeps looking to me for guidance, looking to me for guidance, looking to me for guidance, and I provide. They're satisfied, and we have that arrangement. Then with the kids, I had a realization of, well, I can't do all these things the same way because I don't want the child to grow up dependent on me. So where was I making choices for the dog to build its dependence? And now how do I make a little bit different decision in that similar circumstance, like entertain me, you know, entertain me appropriately as opposed to eating the sofa or whatever. And how do I build that so that they start making their own decisions? They start seeing the consequences, both positive and negative, of their behaviors. And how am I supportive of them becoming independent? And that's the way that fundamentally for me, it comes down to, with dogs or pets in general, how do I reinforce their dependence on me? And with children, how do I reinforce their independence so that they grow, ultimately they can be successful growing away from me, where the dog will be the most happy and I'll be the most happy if they constantly, or they're mostly looking to me or the humans for their source of guidance, their source of entertainment, their source of affection, their source of everything. Mm-hmm. And the thing that keeps that from becoming dysfunctional is you plan for it. You know, you make a schedule, you make a routine, you get in habits that create these behaviors, as opposed to forcing the dog or the child to be super demanding to get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, we tend to ignore when they're good, when it's what we want. Well, you're doing what I want anyway. But so when do they get more feedback from us? Usually it's when they're doing something we don't want. And when do they do that the most? When we're the most focused on something else. Yeah. Because that's when they can get the biggest shift from us, from what we're doing to what they're doing, which probably gives them some validation on some level and some other natural human desires to be met. Mm-hmm. And we're just going to have to deal with that more when we don't want to, if we don't create times for them to get that fulfillment without making the demands for it.
Yeah.
The only way they're going to not make demands is if we plan ahead to fulfill the needs so they don't have to make demands.
Yeah. So would you, I was just listening, and I want to come back to this, but I was just listening last night to a program that I purchased called Positive Parenting. And it was basically about Positive Parenting Solutions. It was basically about, creating the independence from you, and how constantly, like the example she gave was, make sure you thank so-and-so for having you over. And it's like, you have to lay the foundation of teaching them to thank so-and-so for having you over. But it's the constant reminder that actually is damaging to their, she didn't say self-esteem, but that's the word that's coming to my mind. But it's damaging to them when you're constantly hounding them. Make sure you, but so instead of hounding them verbally, then you can, if you give them the opportunity to thank Mrs. So-and-so for having you over. And if it doesn't seem like it's coming, you kind of squeeze their shoulder a little bit. And that's a nonverbal reminder of thank her for having you over. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. The thing that you just said I wanted to come back to was the filling the need first. So if we're leaving the house and we know we're leaving the house, may do one of the techniques that you suggested, put the wet dog food in the toy and put in the freezer, and then get that out for her, or take her for a walk real quick to get out some of that energy, or make sure she has the toys that she's supposed to chew on before we leave, so that we're not just, okay, we're out now, you're on your own, make sure you don't mess up, because I'm going to yell at you when we get home if you mess up.
Right. And especially with dogs, if you come home, if they shredded something in the first half an hour you were gone, and you come home and you get upset because the thing is shredded, that was so long ago. Mm-hmm. They got nothing on that. They can't make any connection there, except that when you came home, there was problems. Because they've been in the same room with that shredded couch, or that pulled apart rug, or that chewed up chair, or whatever, for however long you've been gone, and it's been fine. From their perspective, it's been fine. I'm
the problem, because
and then you're the problem.
Yeah.
And they can maybe start to predict that when there's a shredded thing and you come in, there's a problem. Or if there's poop on the floor and you come in, there's a problem. But again, the only thing that changes, that creates the problem, is the person coming in.
Yeah.
And, that's why we say the first thing that the dog learns about house training is not don't go in the house. It's don't go in front of the people.
And I think that you taught me, I have you and another dog trainer friend, and then my sister's really knowledgeable about dogs as well. So I have my resources of who to talk to, but I think it was you that said every time they come in the house, they get a treat, because we want coming into the house to be a reward. And we have seen that, she's she's still very independent from her, being on her own days. If she gets out of the house, she'll take off. She has come back without us going and looking for her. So she knows that this is home now. But she was very afraid of walking through the front door or back door if my boyfriend was standing there. And so he'd get irritated and just close the door. Well, screw you, you stay outside then. And instead, he's started implementing this trick of every time she comes in the house, here's your treat. And now she's not so scared. And I think the other thing that you taught us was because she was scared of us grabbing her collar and holding the toy or holding the treat close to us, so she has to come to it. So he's been implementing that too, and he's seen great results from that. So we appreciate both of those tips for her specifically getting back into the house and trusting him more. And yeah, so you've significantly decreased the frustration of getting her to trust him more so than me. My sister says that's just because men have different energy than women, and female dogs are a lot more sensitive to that energy. I don't know if that's true, but
some are. Different people have different ideas about gender differences in terms of sweetness or attentiveness, and I think some of it's breed specific more than it is gender specific, and in some cases it may be gender, but so much is overridden by those early experiences you have no idea about. Yeah. And then things like not realizing that a confined space is a place you have to be careful especially if you've had some bad experiences. Doorways are a confined space.
Yeah.
And thresholds in general are a much bigger deal to dogs than they are to us. We pretty much take that for granted, and to them that's a commitment. So they got to be really sure that the commitment is the right one,
the right thing to do.
Right. And that's also a place where one additional, now that you and he are at that level, the next kind of step up from that is before you let the dog in, or before you go to that task, be present with the task and give yourself a few minutes, because so many times we try to squeeze in what we're doing with the dog around everything else we're doing. And dang it, I just need you to come in because I need to go do this other thing. Well, the dog's now picking up on the energy that they're a problem. They don't know how, but they're a problem, and it's a doorway, so it's confined. And it's is it even a good idea to get that close to that person with that emotional intensity right now? And there's no way to come in that isn't right next to them in the door. But if one can just kind of settle for the moment, and even if I've only got 2 minutes, but you can radiate some energy of I've got all day, this is fine. The dog's going to feel a lot safer, a lot. There's less questions in the dog's mind about what are the implications, what do I have to read? So then if you couple that energy of I've got all day plus a habit of, and there's treats for you, or there's a chewy here, then they can go through their mental checklist of what do I have to be careful of much faster. And it's a lot less of an on faith commitment. I mean, it's just coming through the door, right? But to them, it might not be
a commitment.
Right. It is a commitment. And then also when we're not mindful, then we take their resistance or their reluctance to mean they don't trust us, which we take to mean perhaps they don't think we're as good a person. And that's not fair. How dare they? And now now we're in a space of making up that we're being disrespected or whatever is in our particular list of things for ourselves that we tend to default to. that we have our own limiting beliefs about, that we're subconsciously just looking for validation everywhere, right? And the dog not coming in, or the dog not coming when you call, or the dog, all of this is so easy to feed those limiting belief that we have, instead of just going, well, what's this mean for the dog? What if we didn't actually have anything to do with it, and this was purely a logical process for the dog? A cost benefit analysis here,
right?
Which is really what's going on for dogs most of the time. Cost benefit analysis almost entirely.
Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms listening?
As much as you can, compartmentalize so that the time that you are interacting with the dog or the child, because you need it to do something for you, make time and make space for that to be something you do together, not just something you expect this other individual to just automatically know and to just do. Make it be something you do together so that it's relationship building instead of relationship separating.
So good. Is there a book that's been influential in your personal development journey?
There've been quite a few, but maybe the two that were the most accessible early on for me to start just getting my brain around the whole concept. The 4 Agreements was very good for that, and The Alchemist, actually, I would say, is that one's more of a story, but it's an allegory. And so by the time you finish the story and you've lived the life of the character, you have grown a lot, and you see the world in a different way, just as the protagonist in that story does.
Very cool. I don't think it's a fiction novel.
It is.
I don't think anybody's referenced it. Well, I think one person did, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
For the fiction readers and out there listening.
Yeah. Cool. That's a nice blend of, it's a story, and the story brings the information along with it, as opposed to some of these other books that are just about the information, which if you're looking for the information, that's good. But if you aren't quite at that point where you want to be told what you need to be doing, but you'd like to explore some ideas that are different. And I love The Alchemist for that.
Very cool. Where can our listeners find you?
You can find me on dogsanddharma.com. And that's my YouTube channel. That's my website. And I'm also on, I have a podcast on Spotify and some other platforms, On Leash Unleashed. And I've been doing that podcast. I got about 50 episodes now. Most of the episodes run under 10 minutes. And I record them while I'm taking walks with my dogs. And so they help trigger ideas for me to express to other people about, oh, this is a situation people might encounter. Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Let me explore that while I'm doing it. And so I've been really happy with that, and I've gotten a lot of feedback that there's a lot of good ideas at basic levels of thought process and having some success with your dog on things like going for walks, and just general philosophy about living with dogs, being with dogs. Yeah.
I love the title, On Leash Unleashed. That's like really cute. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining today and for having this unique conversation. I haven't had any dog trainers on imperfect momming, but I hope nobody listening is super upset at the comparison of raising dogs and raising children. We mean it in love, and I think that you're differentiating between, there is a difference where we're raising the dogs to be dependent on us and we're raising our children to be independent, is a huge difference. But a lot of the other things are consistency and routine, and where they know what to expect, especially in the younger age, where you can't reason with a dog and you can't reason with a 2-year-old.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, so good. So thank you for being here and pouring into our guests. It was a lovely conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to have an opportunity to talk about both dogs and kids, because raising them both has just been such a treasured part of my life.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to share both of those things. Thank you.
So we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.